ARRI's new Impression V Filters give cinematographers the ability to detune signature prime and signature zoom lenses on set. All 8 Impression V filters attach quickly and easily to the back of signature lenses, fundamentally changing the way they capture images. By shifting the character and feel of out-of-focus areas in the image, known as bokeh, Impression V filters introduce a variety of characteristics associated with vintage lenses. Positive strength Impression V filters produce what is sometimes called Christmas ball bokeh, where out-of-focus highlights are bright in the center and blurry at the edges. Signature lenses are already famous for their exceptionally soft bokeh, and Positive Impression V filters take this even further, adding a swirling effect that wraps around subjects in an emotionally comforting way. It's an amazing look for capturing intimate moments. Skin tones seem to glow, and the whole image has a feeling of glamour, reminiscent of classic mid-century Hollywood movies. Negative strength Impression V filters have the opposite effect. Backgrounds are sharper, displaying donut bokeh, where highlights are darker in the center and brighter at the edges. Instead of blending into each other, they overlap, creating abstract textures that feel vibrant and energetic, or even unsettling. Overall, the negative filters have a grittier feel. The 4 positive and 4 negative Impression V filters gradually increase in strength, allowing you to tailor the degree of detuning that is right for your project or for a specific shot. Combine these filters with creative color grades for an unlimited number of different looks that make signature lenses adaptable to a wide range of styles. Manipulate the mood of a scene very subtly, or shoot for a more extreme look that maximizes emotional impact. The choice is yours.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening to my voiceover. I have a new career at ARRI as a voiceover artist. It's very exciting. Thanks for coming. Really glad you're here. We're going to talk about some really interesting stuff, and it's not going to be just me talking either. We have 4 cinematographers who are going to come up and show their work, and we're going to talk about their experiences with the filters. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start off by showing some examples that I've captured or worked with other people to capture, just to give you a quick understanding of what effects we're going to be looking at. And it's only about 30% of what the filters do, but it'll give you an idea of what to look for as we start going through the other films. Then we will have our 4 guest cinematographers come up, and we're going to go through each of their short films one by one, and we're going to have a little conversation about their experiences. And then afterwards, we have a live demo. So we're going to bring out, we've got a mini LF and some basic lighting and a lot of filters. And we're going to play around for a while and see what we can see. I've found these filters to be a really interesting journey because I've never been able to figure out exactly what's happening in a vintage lens until I started playing with these filters, because now I can have a lens that looks like a vintage lens, and then I can take the vintage out and see what the difference is. And then I can also understand the exact characteristics of what's going on. And we'll go into some more of that in a bit. But I think right now, I should move on to the presentation, if we can bring the lights down. I promise it's not going to be death by PowerPoint. It might be minor injury by PowerPoint, but it'll go quickly, and I think it'll be helpful. So that's me. Moving on. So here's where we started. We started with a net holder behind signature lenses because at heart, we're still basically a film company. That's where our roots are. And the product manager for these lenses thought it would be fun to put a net holder behind the lenses because, that's classic Hollywood diffusion. But what we realized is if we went to an optometrist, an eyeglass lab and had diopters made up, we could put diopters behind the lens and get some really interesting effects. But the effects weren't quite interesting enough, and of course they destroyed focus marks. So it took us a few years, but so each filter is at its core a diopter, but it also has more spherical aberration than a normal diopter would, and it's got a lot more coma. And those are the two things we're going to look at right now. So these are not simple diopters. And the important thing is that focus scales will track. So you can still focus in infinity, close focus doesn't change, focus scale is dead on. So these are the filters. We have two families, positive and negative. Positive is basically undercorrected spherical aberration, which makes backgrounds really soft and glamorous and pretty, and is really pleasant to faces. It kind of gives skin an interesting glow and softness. The negatives tend to introduce what I call donut bokeh to the background, so the ring effect. The highlights take on a donut shape with a hot outer edge and a dark center. And you tend to have a lot of hard edges in the background, which kind of draw the eye around the image, and it kind of feels like a more energetic frame. And one thing I think we're going to talk about today with one or more of our cinematographers is the negatives actually do really nice things to skin as well. And one of the things that happened when I made that, we did that voiceover for that film is we hadn't really looked at close-ups through the negative filters. And they're really interesting on skin, and you're going to see more of that in just a moment. So this is some test footage we captured in front of an LED wall. You're going to see more of this in a bit, and we actually have the cinematographer director who worked with us on this present to talk more about it. But what we wanted was a controlled environment where we could really break down the look of the lens. So this is no filter at all. And by the way, this my PowerPoint is HD only to this screen, so it's not 4K, so it might be a little bit softer, but I think you're going to get the idea. So here's the 70p. This is the lightest strength positive filter. You can see we're already starting to see a little bit of smearing, and the highlights in these rings they're starting to move out towards the outer edge. They're starting to face outwards. And as we go to the 140, you can see more of that. So we've got quite a lot of undercorrected spherical aberration, which is introducing this kind of nice softness. And then we're getting a lot of coma out here, and that's creating a swirling effect that signature lenses naturally have, but we're enhancing it. And that's kind of the extreme. So 4 positive filters. And then we go to negative filters. So let's start at 0 again. We're going to go the other direction. So we're going to start seeing the opposite effect happen. So you can see now we're getting a little bit of that donut effect. And we're also getting kind of the shapes are starting to pull inward, so the exact opposite of what we saw previously. So it's really interesting because when they're facing this direction, you don't feel that swirl anymore. So there's some interesting psychological effect going on that I haven't quite figured out yet, but it's really interesting that you don't get the same swirl out of this filter. And that's the range. So those the two most extreme filters. Moving quickly along. So one thing that we wanted to test, and actually the director DP that I worked with on capturing these images wanted to look at was how do they work with hard light? Because he really likes using hard light on faces if the face can kind of take it and has the right bone structure. But, and also I know there are a lot of DPs that like to combine soft lenses with hard light. So this is something we wanted to experiment with. And this is kind of the range of what we came up with. What's interesting is, so there is a little bit of a size change, but it's not that big a deal. But we seem to have a little bit more of a glow here, and a little bit less of a glow here, but it's still soft. And this has to do with the fact that when you have spherical aberration, fine detail focuses in front or behind the sensor. It doesn't focus in the same detail as same place as coarse detail, which is typically what you would focus on, like eyes. So that's where that smoothness comes from. And I don't remember where the fine detail is focusing on this one, but it's focusing in a place that creates a really nice glow. And here we just have softness, but we don't have the glow. And this is a quick look at background. So this is an actual background. This is shot in New York City. So no filter at all. And then we're going to add the positive. And we get a nice swirling effect. And the background becomes softer. And if we take a quick look at the top corner here, you can kind of see what's going on. And then we're going to go to the negatives. And now we have a much coarser background. Much coarser background. It's not nearly as soft. And if we compare those, you can see there are some significant differences. So there's some really fascinating stuff going on. And like I said, this is about 30% of what these filters do. So, but we'll try to get into that a little bit more in a moment. I guess that's the end of my slideshow. So let's bring the lights up. And let's welcome our guest DPs. We have Jeff Berlin, Lorenzo Scudiero, Shores Mosman, and Manu Anand. What? All right, I'll squeeze in here. All right, so the first thing we're going to see is we're going to look at, this is Jeff Berlin here. Jeff has a long history as a fashion photographer, and he's moving into cinematography. And we worked with him on shooting these LED wall tests that we're going to take a look at right now.
I'm Jeff Berlin. I'm Jeff Berlin. I'm a DP based in Los Angeles. So not too long ago, I sat down with Art Adams to discuss creating our own project to explore further what the impression filters were doing. We went ahead with that and created 8 different scenarios to showcase how the filters would affect different environments. Some of them, you know, like the moon and Tokyo and this restaurant and the subway, they all convey different feelings. And then when you apply these filters, it just takes it further. It was very interesting to me how I could fuse into an image my identity and play with the different strengths as well to create different effects. Some that might be more painterly and impressionistic, others that take down the resolution but still give a good edge to your backgrounds while still maintaining a beautiful skin tone and a beautiful skin texture, for example. What the 70 positive impression filter allows me to do is give to the face of the model or actor exactly the effect that I want to clean up the skin and to have a super flattering look, and make sure that that look stays throughout the post-pipeline, that my intent for how I want my actor's skin to look will always remain no matter what. So this is the moon. What we thought was really interesting about this background was, of course, the way the star field would be affected by the various strengths of the filters. But at the same time, this weird, you know, planet had like weird rocks on it, and the rocks are also affected in really interesting ways by the filters as well. From the positive that give it a little bit more of a washed look to the negative, which brings out some of the edges more. And you can see as we progress from the positive filters into the negative filters and back and forth, the way the stars are affected. They become softer and they become a little bit more edgy. And it's interesting to see too how our model Ruby is affected by the different strengths of the filters from positive to negative and what it does to her skin and face. The museum is a really fun scenario where you can see some really great effects of how the filters are affecting the image. If you look at the columns and some of the sculptures and even the windows, you'll see how the filters are affecting those elements in the frame. And of course, again, positive versus negative on our model Ruby's face. With the positive, we can see how the columns and the sculptures, the edges are blurring, and it's a little bit more dreamy, it's a little bit more abstract, versus the negative where you're seeing finer, more defined edges and a little bit more detail in the color elements. I think that's a really interesting disparity. This New York City subway scene is one of my favorites out of all of them. Besides the fact that I just love the cyan overall tone to it, just brings me right back to New York. To me, this was all about Ruby and how she looked. So we smoked up her eyes, we put her in a vintage t-shirt, we had her kind of strap hanging on a pole in there. Moving through the filters, you know, I just loved going from the 70 positive, which just, again, she just looks really beautiful in that filter, and then just taking it all the way to the 330 positive, which kind of gives this super cool, dreamy look to the whole car. And while she still looks beautiful, it just kind of takes New York City subway to the next level. It's super cool. Tokyo is just the most extraordinary place. And so when Art and I first started discussing this project, I immediately thought we have to have a Tokyo scene. It's so visual. As you progress through the filters, you can really see how all the letters and the characters and everything and the textures in the background change as the different filters are applied to the image. Tokyo is like a dream. And so, you know, you go into the most powerful 330 positive filter and you're in this dream world of Tokyo with purple light in her hair and red light coming from behind. And you know, we've got Ruby lit by all these super cool colors. And she's against this really amazing background that it takes what's already interesting and gives it life. So the restaurant to me was the big surprise of this whole project because it was unplanned. I was literally at dinner one night and I turned around and looked at the room and I said, oh my goodness, this room is going to be the perfect way to convey the effects of the filters. So I literally rotated in my chair, snapped a few photos, and then here we are. So what I found as we applied the different levels of filters, it took us from what is a really pretty shot of Ruby in a restaurant setting where she looks like she's sitting in this restaurant to an impressionist painting, where if you look at how specifically the 330 positive filter washes into the leaves and the lights and the textures in the background, all of a sudden we're transported into 1880s France, and I think it's extraordinary. We decided to do a focus rack to see how the filters would appear during, you know, a change in your focus point. We used the Tokyo background because the Tokyo background had so many linear points of interest. Like there were so many linear elements in there that would show the effects of what the filters would do. As we rack to Kimberly, what we're seeing with the negative filter is how beautiful the softness becomes in the background while still holding some of the edge detail. And yet Kimberly has a beautiful softness with a little bit less glow than you would see with the positive filter. What I really love about what I'm seeing here under the soft light is how Kimberly's skin is truly radiant with the positive filters. Keep an eye on her earrings as we switch to the negative filters now. And what we're seeing in her skin tone is a similar softness that's super flattering and yet a little bit less of a dreamy feel. I love when a face can take a hard light. And hard light can sometimes be unforgiving. And so what I'm really liking about what I'm seeing here is that with the positive filters, they're introducing this beautiful softness to her skin texture while really flattering glow to her skin tone. What I'm finding with the skin tone is a more subtle effect, less dreamy than what you find with the positive filter. So one of the things, what I love about the positive filter and the way it affects faces is that it holds contrast and keeps the black levels where they are, but it introduces this beautiful glow to the skin. The fact that we have filters now that bring out beauty under an unforgiving light, that's really transformative. What the impression filters are allowing me to do is infuse the image with the photographic intent that realizes the vision that I, as a cinematographer, want to impart into that image. My sensibility will carry through into that final product.
So I think we have some still images from that. Let's take a look at the first one. But if we can move, there we go. Yeah, let's talk about the restaurant. And I have to very quickly point out this highlight to the right of her face that's turning a little green. That's not an ARRI highlight. I just want to make that clear.
Is this on?
It sounds like it. So yeah, tell us a little bit about this.
So this was kind of like I just said in the video. I was sitting in my chair at dinner, and I turned around with my iPhone, set it to RAW, and snapped the image. I saw the trees, and I had already seen what art did in New York, and so I knew that trees would make an interesting element, or leaves, groups of leaves, wood bushes would make an interesting element in an image with these filters. And so I saw this room, and I thought this canopy of leaves and trees branches could be perfect. And so I snapped a few images, and then we recreated the restaurant on the ARRI stage in Burbank. And what I really like about this, what I think is really interesting, a couple things. It really does kind of transport you into this other time. It's very impressionistic, what it does to the wash that it gives to the leaves and to the elements behind. And also, I think if we have, do we have another image of the positive, of the negative?
Let's see.
You could also look at the logo in the cup. We could discuss that. Or do we not have that?
Not unless you send it over.
So anyway, what I really like about the restaurant is the impressionist kind of feeling, the wash in the trees that just really kind of give a little bit more magic to that scene.
Okay, let's talk quickly about this one, and then we have one more. So I know you really like this.
So this is with I think the 200 negative. What I really love, so this was a little bit transformative because we kind of went in with the positive filters being the real beauty filter, and then when I got Kimberly under the light and started looking at her through the lenses with the negative filters on them, there was this magic that totally took me by surprise, where it had this baseline sharpness, but it was giving this beautiful texture. It was just cleaning up the texture in a way that was really, really beautiful to me, without giving that extra glow. But I think in this scenario, it really, really worked very well.
Yeah, I kind of regret calling these filters the glamorous filters for the positive and the gritty filters for the negative.
Yeah, because to me, the negative here is just as glamorous as the positive.
And that was just talking about the background. We hadn't really gotten into shooting faces with the negatives a lot yet. We have one more image, I think, to look at from this. There we go.
And this looks like negative as well. And and I'm seeing that by looking at the specular highlights, for example, on her earring. Or earrings. And, again, what I'm loving about what I'm seeing with these filters is that it's holding the black levels. The blacks aren't milking out, and yet I'm getting this really terrific diffusion, and it's cleaning up the skin, and I'm getting this softness, and it's really cleaning up the texture of her skin. But again, even with the negative filter, it's a beauty filter. That's what I'm seeing here,
And just one quick thing that I'll point out is when you have the effect of a filter in the background, like the positive in the background, you actually will have the negative filter in the foreground in front of the point of focus. So you can see that here on her earrings, you can see the donut, but on her nose ring, you can see the positive filter with
because there's
hot center and glow.
that baseline. You know, you're still, even at those stronger filters, you still have this baseline sharpness, and then the filter does its magic.
Lorenzo, it's your turn. So Lorenzo shot our Italian impressionist film when we first launched the impression filters, and we're going to take a look at that right now. All right, everyone like that? That was pretty good. It was short, but it was pretty good. Do we have the, there we go.
Rainy days don't seem so wet. Stormy nights don't stay. From the moment that we met, you were worth the wait. Oh, this could be the best thing that I'll ever know. Talked for hours and never slept. Two silhouettes on the concrete steps. We watched the sun as it slowly crept from the horizon to the place we met. Oh, this could be the best thing that I'll ever know. Best thing that I'll ever know.
That was a really, I love that little short. It's really nicely done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So tell us how you did it.
Basically, I got a phone call from ARRI team in Italy asking me to try out this new line of filters and to shoot something with it. I thought about a story of this couple. I wanted to try to have like a very romantic feel on this story, also from the visual style. And I think the positives helped a lot in that. Creating this like background which is kind of hugging the characters. Also, all these aberrations that are softening the image are really like pushing the intimacy. I guess, I like it a lot. Also, when we are going through the leaves in the background, I think that's the real magic is happening there.
So this stuff happens a lot with textures and background. It's a really beautiful little look, especially when the camera is moving and the light's shimmering through the leaves.
I really think it adds something to this moment. I was trying to go for like these little moments of intimacy, and this is just elevating.
Let's look at the next one, because I think you have a couple more images. So tell us about this one.
I think also is really flattering on the skin tones. I mean, signature primes are a really good starting point for that. I really like the roll-off they have, but this is like making, I feel the image is popping out a little bit more. I like that how it's swirling in the background, and so also how he's smoothing the face in the center. Also, one thing I like feel is when you are like moving with the camera around there, you are having this like effect. I don't know how to say. It's more about like a painterly look that helps.
So, sort of like random interactions of things?
Yeah. It's like happy accidents
Yeah.
going on in the background.
Yeah, I feel the same thing. And it's interesting because, you know, they're almost like planned happy accidents, because I've come to know what they're going to do, and I can choose what works, which I'm sure you do as well. And then you when you get the result, though, it's like, oh yeah, that actually worked. It's really nice.
Yeah, when I was lining up this shot, this was one of the first. I was like trying to understand what intensity I was liking more, and then I tried to keep it like consistent throughout the shooting. And I think also if we can see also the other, I think.
Yes. Let's go to the next picture.
Especially in this shot when you're moving there, you can really feel it. I mean, basically, I have the feeling like having, I don't know, like 3 sets of lenses in one case, kind of power on set.
Interesting. So what I don't know, you obviously went with the positives because they worked, but you know, there were so many different looks. I guess like the trees were really interesting. I'm not sure what other image you chose. Let's go to the fourth and final image. There we go. Yes, I remember this. And I love how the lights kind of swirl and stretch at the edges of the frame.
Yeah, I went for the positives because I feel the negatives are also very interesting, but they add kind of a more anxious feel. And I was trying to get like very smooth in this project and very like intimate. So that's why I chose those. Also, here it is really like doing some magic stuff in the background here with all the Christmas lights. I mean, it's something that you already have with signatures, but this is like really helping to bring this out. I don't know, I think that you basically have the power to change the background emotionally, because you can make it more anxious with maybe negatives and more like romantic with the positives. Apart from that, you also have all those like little fun stuff and magic going around in the frame with the aberration. So
Cool. Yeah, it's interesting. The backgrounds become very smooth, and I feel like people pop out more, even though they're softer. And then the negatives introduce so many hard edges that my eye just keeps moving around all the time, and it's a very anxious kind of feel.
That is, very interesting too, because you can find the right tool for the project, and maybe you need that kind of feeling in the shot. So for this one, it was like more like getting this like intimacy, and I think they are like the romantic part of impressions.
Cool. Now you shot on mini LF.
Yeah, this was shot on mini LF, mostly with the 40 millimeters and 25, and something with more telephotos. Yeah, you can definitely feel more this effect on the large format, because you are basically having more in the outer part of the lens, which has more aberration.
And then we shot on mini LF, but Shores, you shot on Alexa 35.
Yes.
So let's
Test.
let's take a look at your spot, and then we'll talk more about that.
I
I remember when we rode together through the valleys of our past, framing the horizons of our future. Free to follow our dreams. We were dancing and laughing. Wherever our road may lead next, promise me we will ride together.
All right. So let's talk really briefly about how you came to try the impression filters, because you've been experimenting with similar things previously.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Before this shot, I had a Köln cosmetic shoot, and I was in on a location, and I was looking for more depth, more of that Christmassy feeling, and I was trying all lenses and filters and to get those bokehs to pop more and to get also more separation. I was struggling, and then all of a sudden my focus puller, Giel van Dongen, he said like, why don't you try a diopter? So we put the diopter in front, and bang, like immediately it was the look I was searching for, like sort of this vignetting and those bokehs to pop, and I loved it instantly, and we ended up shooting the entire spec with the diopter in front. You can see it now on my Instagram, it's just posted. And I really liked it, but it also had a lot of problematic ways, because your focus skills are all off and it's getting more difficult. But yeah, he suggested it, so I didn't care, you know. And then this spot came on, and I was like, yeah, I really like it's my first car spec, so I wanted to try to put something of myself into it, but also get a phone call back. So I wanted everything to be sharp and correct and working. But I really like this swirly effect of the diopter, and I landed on these impression filters, and I understood immediately that they are also not filters but diopters. And I was like, okay, this is like the same thing. I keep the focus marks, and then the center stays sharp, and I wanted this swirling effect on the Ukraine. So basically this spec is shot on 3 cameras. On the Ukraine it was the ARRI 35 with a 24-75 signature zoom in the impression filter. The more lifestyle stuff is Alexa Mini with super speeds. And then you have the new, I think, X9 drone from Inspire, is like the aerials. But I really liked this swirly effect of the impression filters, and I thought it would be really cool to have that on the Ukraine, like going up and down the mountain. So we did some camera tests in Croatia, and I had to use it on a zoom. And then I found that it did interesting stuff, you know, like at a certain point we were on the 220 and 330 and went through all the ranks. And what I found out what was interesting is that sometimes, like on the 330, like street pillars can go like all the way double, and I'm like, I don't know if that's for me, you know, but I really like the softness, and it's very subtle in this spec, you know, like I wasn't really looking like, okay, everybody has to see it, but I would just want to give it a little bit. And then I noticed that like the 230 gave just like the amount of softness and a little bit of the vignetting, because of course I'm Super 35, so it's less, it gets heavier around the edges. And I also noticed that when you stop down, it disappears, you know. So you also have, like, when you're under Ukraine, you need speed, you know, like you want to control it, and if you don't like it, it's like choop, and it's gone. And I loved it, and we end up using it. And also because afterwards we're also shooting in a volume, and also like the distorting effect on the background. If you shoot close to the volume LED, you can get also aberration. So I was like, it's a perfect tool for this shot.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's see, what were you saying? There was something that there was something in there that rang a bell. Let's look at the next image then. So what are we seeing here? I mean, you did have a very light touch, which I think is interesting. And it was something that when Jeff and I were working together, we found at some point that we were really looking at the lightest filters. You know, we started with the heaviest ones and went, that's a really cool look, and then we just kept dialing back and dialing back and dialing back. So is that sort of what you were doing?
Yeah, so basically because I'm Super 35 and on 2.8 of the zoom, I believe, and 230, it's already like, it comes more to like the 100. I think you have more view. Yeah, exactly. But I was wide open for the zoom then, but it's more stopped down. But why I showed this one, because it's like, of course, the focus drop off of the lens is really nice. But I have the feeling that with the signature, it just gives you a little bit of that small vignette. But again, it's very subtle. But when you go like off on, you see it, you know. And yeah, I thought it's just like it helps with this, like what you say, like a little bit more impressionistic, a little bit more of that. Interesting feel, like, yeah.
Yeah, I remember what I was going to say is, when you stop these down, you do lose some of the effect, but it's the same thing with a vintage lens. All vintage lenses perform better when you stop them down. But what I found is, and I don't know if this is the same thing that you saw, but on the zooms that open up to 2.8, I get about half the effect. So like a 330p would be a 140p equivalent, or something like that, but you still feel what's happening. Yeah. So we've done some interesting tests with zooms, and we actually have noticed that we can get some rough comparisons between a zoom and some vintage primes.
And also had the feeling that when you zoom in, it also does different things. I mean, I had the luxury to do a test, but it wasn't unfortunately as detailed as yours, and I already deleted all the results. But yeah, it does things. It's interesting to check it out and explore more with the filters and the focal ranges and the zooms and.
I think we have one more image from your project. There we go.
This one, yeah. Yeah, so basically, this one is not in the spec, but I put it in because this is the path I took for the Christmas commercial. This is a 12mm zero distortion Laowa lens on the Alexa Mini, and here I put a +1 diopter in front of it. So what you see is like the extreme version, actually. In my opinion, I'm not a lens technician, but what you see is like really this swirling, focusing to the middle of the diopter, and it immediately gives you this sucking motion, like you get sucked into it. And I found it very interesting, and I wanted to show this to you guys. It will be used in a smaller spec, but this is basically the path that led me to the impression filters.
Interesting, yeah, because I do feel like there are similarities there. Interesting.
But I'm interesting also if there's a ARRI Tech lens technician who thinks it's a completely different way it works, please tell me, because I'm curious.
We've got someone at the booth who can tell you. All right, Manu, let's talk about your project, because you did some really interesting stuff, very experimental.
Hi, everybody. I sort of went with the vintage, and then my mind sort of went into this artistic journey of vintage. And then I chose a vintage track, and it's a classical track, Indian classical track, which is almost 100 years old. And then everything sort of progressed from finding the music, and then the impression filters sort of helped me, which you'll see, paint this sort of nostalgic tribute to a vintage track and a vintage feel of the image. So I hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Baby,
You tried a lot of stuff. This was really cool to watch. There's so much information there to look at because of all the things you tried.
Thank you, everybody. So I really tried to see how painterly the filters effect was. And I did test the negatives, but for the look and feel I was going for in this film, I felt that the positives were really enhancing the painterly feel. And when I watch it now on big screen, sometimes I wish I'd put film grain into it to enhance that, and I wish I had done that. But if you can see, it just does something to the backgrounds with even some amount of chromatic aberration towards the edges, spherical aberration towards the edges. And that sense of the background being completely, like something mystical and inexplicable starts happening in the background. And I don't know what the effect is, but psychologically, it sort of is kind of transformative. And you feel like it's real, but not really real. And that's why I sort of chose the positives for this film. And also I tested different apertures. And like you were mentioning, as soon as you started stopping down, the effect starts diminishing. And since I was shooting a dancer and she was completely improvising, I wasn't able to keep 1.8 throughout, and my focus puller was dying. So sometimes I went to T4 and to T2.8, and the focus puller was happy, but then the effect starts diminishing. You can see that the 330s, especially, just feel like they're from another world altogether and have that classic sort of swirling vintage feel. I think it's in another image.
Okay, yeah, we can go to the next one. And ARRI will donate 10% of all profits to a charity for focus pullers who suffer because we're making everyone shoot at T1.8. Not really, but we should. Actually, we're being very kind at T1.8, so I'll just put that on the record.
So because she was improvising, again, I'm at T2.8 on an 18, but you can see how the background and the trees and the bouquet in the background, they don't feel what you traditionally are used to seeing from a signature prime. And the positives, especially my favorites were, like my feeling is that if the 140 and the 70, they were so subtle that I was only able to see their effect if I was focusing close as well, and the background was far. But as soon as in the film there are shots where I'm at a 140 and the actor is also almost the same plane as the tree itself, and you can't really see the effect. So at T2.8, up close, you still see the effect, especially when it's like close to minimum focus. And again, it just transforms the background into something that is sort of very, very, very subtly separate from reality. But I chose this image because of what it does to the skin as well. The skin also starts getting just a little bit of the glow. And it's something that we all love about vintage lenses, that feeling of the glow that comes full open, especially because of the internal reflections that used to happen. But this I was getting at 2.8 also, up close. So I thought that was very interesting what the positives were doing to the skin tone.
Interesting. And I believe we have one more image. Let's take a look at that. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so this one I chose because this one really felt like outer worldly. And if I had film grain on this, I feel I could have convinced people that this was shot maybe in the 1940s or the 50s. And again, the swirling of the background and just the smear, it almost feels like a bit of a smear happens at the same time as the swirling. And the smearing also feels, maybe I'm using the wrong word, but the smearing of pushing towards the edges, and it helps you focus your eyes to what is really important. But yet, you also, it's not just about having the background separated from the foreground, but here you find something interesting in the background at the same time, which I think is really interesting about the impression filters. It's a lot of DPs, a lot of times they're just pushing, say, hey, let's separate the background, let's throw it out of focus. Let's just throw it out of focus, especially with the larger sensor sizes now. But here you throw it out of focus and yet you give something emotional to the image in the background. Like the negatives, I wish I would do a test with the negatives, because after looking at your test, it's so fascinating what the negative filters do to a background. And in this one, it's the positive. And in a comparison, I think this idea that you said that it's more about beauty, I don't necessarily think it's true anymore after looking at your test especially. I think it depends on a certain preconceived notion also that we have with the donut bouquet as compared to the slightly, I think, bauble?
I call it halo because it is a hot center.
Halo. So yeah, I chose this image because it just feels so magical and vintage.
And what's really interesting is that the trees are what attract my attention immediately, but being on a low couch below a screen, I look at what's going on at the bottom and in the corners, and there's something very different happening.
Yeah. That's what I thought was this. It feels like a bit of a smear. It's like what you would get with Vaseline or something on the old lenses, and you could have like literally the details sort of smearing into each other.
Yeah, something we found also is that the effects tend to be different at different focal lengths and different distances. So I did a shot in Brooklyn looking at Manhattan, and it was a 75 millimeter looking at people like 30 meters away or something like that. And the effect of the strongest filters was just crazy, over the top. And yet if you use that same effect on a shot that's this big, it's very subtle. So they do different things focused at different depths, and as far as we can tell, it just has to do with the size of the subject. If the subject's larger in the frame, you still see an effect, but it's not as strong as if you have a subject that's very far away with a lot of detail, and then you see more.
And also, when I shot on the signature zooms, and those were at full open at 2.8, and the effect was a lot less at 2.8, even though I had a heavy filter at times on it at 230p and a 140p, which would be very clear on a prime, but then on the zoom, it wasn't that clear. But overall, I felt that the control that this sort of tendency to detune these lenses, that signature primes already have this beautiful look to them, and but what they're allowing me as a DOP to do to the background is something that really excites me. And of course to the foreground, but it's a little more subtle, I feel, in the foreground, in the skin. You have to like look for it in close-ups. But with the background, I feel it opens opportunities to us that we can maybe subliminally influence a sort of emotional feel, which is what we as DOPs want to do. And for one of the projects I was about to do, I specifically was going to use the negatives, and because of the anxiety, you said, it gives a sense of anxiety in the background, that something, because we are so used to seeing a way a lens throws the background out of focus, the negatives just completely subvert that, and they push a little more, anxieties are actually a really good word, because it's something that you're not really expecting, but you're seeing it and like, why is that happening? And you can't put your finger on it, so.
Yeah, it's very interesting, especially that I've noticed a lot of vintage lens sets will look like the negatives up to about 40, and then beyond that, they'll start looking like the positives. So you could actually split them across a lens set, which could be kind of interesting to do. But a lot of people really like, they want to go one way or the other. So I'm still looking to see how people are using them, because it's kind of early days, and we've got a lot out there in the world, and people are using them all sorts of different ways, and we're trying to figure out, by the way, we're trying to figure out what to do next. So how many people here like cool flares, like bluish flares? All right, we have a few. How many like warm flares? Yeah, that seems to be the trend. A lot of people want warm flares. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, because I feel like blue flares are popular with anamorphics, but with a lot of the new rehoused lenses, yeah, I think the flares tend to be on the warm side. So we're considering our options. So why don't we do a live demo? So we're going to pull a camera out here, and we're going to bring out a model, and we're going to play around a little bit. So let's do that now. Come on, grab a mic. Come on this way. Oh, yes. Yes, you'll be talking your way through this, or talking your way out of it. I'm not sure which way, but let's have some fun. All right, so we have a mini LF. We're starting with a 47, and once again, the feed to the screen is going to be HD. All right, the camera's up, so if we can switch over to the camera feed. And we're doing this completely spontaneously, by the way. We haven't planned this out at all, so. All right, if we could. Okay, if we could kill the stage lights, and also if we could pan this Octabank, just pan it right. It's not aimed up. There it is, perfect. Thank you. All right, if we can kill the house lights, I think we'll have enough to look at. We do need the camera feed up on the screen before we do that. Oh, never mind. Technical error on someone's fault. There we go. Okay, now we can kill the stage lights. Okay, so this is the native look of a signature prime, and in case you're not familiar with it, they tend to go out of focus very quickly and very smoothly. So you can see the background just kind of goes away really quickly. There is a little bit of a cat's eye at wide open, which is pretty typical, because you know, if you don't have some cat's eye wide open, then you end up with a very big, very heavy lens, but we've worked really hard to make it look as nice as it does. Jeff, did you want to guide our model here?
Sure. Why don't we have you kind of angle a little bit this way with your body only, and then bring your face back a little bit. Just a little bit more. Turn your whole body. Like shift your legs around. There you go. There you go. Drop your front shoulder a little bit. Shoulders down. Just relax, nice and easy, and bring your face back. There you go.
Jeff has done this before. Okay. Manu, what filter? Choose a filter. What are we going to do?
Real relaxed and easy. Relax yourself there.
I would say we go big and go to the 330.
330 positive, coming up. Yeah. Jeff's excited about that. Why are you excited about that?
Well, I think it'll be a good look.
Yeah.
I think it'll.
Okay, we're going to have to go the other direction and see what happens, though.
Look how pretty. Nice and soft.
Yeah, so I'm certainly seeing a swirling effect of the edges. And this background, I think, is great for showing off what this filter does.
Yeah, the background is just a stroke of
breathe.
luck.
Sorry, Manu, what were you saying?
So the background's been a stroke of luck for us to showcase the swirling on the 330s because you can see it in the lines completely.
We've been planning this for a long time.
Yeah, in fact, with the negative, the bricks will be an interesting element with the negative filters.
Yeah, we should, yeah.
Let's go extreme on the negative and see what happens.
Yeah, let's do that. Maybe 270?
290.
290.
We'll go all the way.
I think it's also nice to see if we stop down what it does, that you can really control the effect.
We can definitely do that. And by the way, we are open gate. Yeah, so.
Yeah. See, but we're seeing it again. I mean, it's still that, it's flattering, but it's got a little bit more of an edge to it, you know?
Yeah, I see more definition of the background. And
What filter are we on?
This
290
negative.
Okay.
But yeah, I think there's a significant difference. And I don't feel the swirling anymore. So for some reason, when you've got the comas pulling inward, it breaks that sense of swirling.
Yeah.
So
And I like how the bricks kind of have a little bit of
a texture and edge. So
Texture
even
and
though it's
edge,
soft, you can still feel the hard edges of the brick. Yeah, why don't we, let's see, close down a little bit.
The eyes are always a little sharper in the 290 negative compared to the 330 positive.
I have a theory about that, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I've noticed that a lot of older lenses tend to do this overcorrected look with the donut, and I think it's because when you can't correct for spherical aberration, this just looks sharper. So that's my theory. I haven't found anything that tells me that, but it just seems to be very consistent. But let's see, what stop are we at?
2.5.
You know, but you know what we're seeing though, what I really like is that, you know, even as you progress up through the strengths, that the black levels don't milk out.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And it was interesting that we discovered on our shoot, because we started off liking the positives so much, and then when we discovered the negatives, you know, we were looking at the background so much, we stopped looking at the foreground, and we started looking at the faces. We had a very different response.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Lorenzo, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think my eyes are more like drawn to the background with these filters. I mean, with the negatives. I mean, I'm kind of like going more back and forth in this left and right part with the specular highlights. Yeah, I think it just gives me more like that feeling instead of the positive, the smoothing out all. Yeah.
So now that we've looked at this, let's go back to the strongest positive and just look at this at 2.8 and see what the difference is. So what you're seeing is what would happen if these were used on a zoom, and generally I find it's about half the effect of wide open when you go down to about 2.8. Oh yeah, that's really interesting. Sorry, Manu, you said, did you want to see full open?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's go full open. So, wildly different look.
Can we check focus?
Yeah. Okay.
I need a bigger monitor.
Sean wants a bigger monitor. We won't go into this now, but your depth of field actually shifts forward and back with these filters depending on which one you're using, by the way. So that's an extra additional little thing to know. There was something interesting that happened when you went through the focus range. Can you do that again? And go back? When you went kind of quick, it almost felt like the center is changing at a different rate than the rest of it, which is something else I've seen in a lot of vintage lenses.
Talk about the effect being different either side of the plane of focus. So
Oh yeah, we can talk about that. So I mentioned before that if you have donut on one side of the point of focus, you'll have the halo bokeh on the other side, and we can see that here because now if we're focused way forward, actually focus past him. So we'll start seeing donut. See how he's going out of focus with a lot of hard edges. So we now have donut bokeh on the front of the point of focus here. So this is the positive filter, dreamy background, sharper foreground. And then on the negatives, it flips. Sharper background, softer foreground. And your depth of field changes as well. The saying I use is depth of field follows the donut. So if you've got the donut in the background, you're going to have, your depth of field is going to start, on the strongest filter, it's going to start on his face and go almost entirely back. And on this filter, it's starting in his face and going almost entirely forward. And then the lesser filters will give you a little bit more leeway. And I'm curious, is this something that you guys would use? Because I've shot over the shoulder shots where on the positive filter the background is super soft and the person in the foreground is sharp. And then you switch to the negative filter and the background has a lot of hard edges and the person in the foreground is the softest thing in the frame. So it's just something I've played around with. It's an interesting effect. Yeah, let's look at the 75. Positive or negative, gentlemen?
Negative, and then without the bokehs in the background, because now all the time we are looking like for this effect to showcase what it does. Mm-hmm. But in Jeff's example, like the landscape of the face with the negative filter is really nice, but the harsh bokeh is like what draws people back. And now I'm just wondering, like, I never put like Christmas lights behind somebody. Right. So like, right. Do I still think that it's a harsh effect without these extreme lights? I'm really curious, like to go to a negative and then put the little Christmas lights off.
Okay, let's do the 75,
but have some
290 in.
We still need some light on the background.
Yeah, we've got a special over here.
Okay, super.
And yeah, can we unplug the Christmas lights? Thank you very much.
It's really interesting. Like it's like most of the time in these test shots, it's the Christmas lights that take me off. But when I look at this, it also reminds me a little bit of those Helios effect lenses. You know, like it's also like very strongish bokeh, but
it's interesting how the Christmas lights are still contributing something even though they're off, which is really interesting. And this is something I see in a lot of vintage lenses a lot too. And that's when I've learned so much about what vintage lenses are doing by being able to take these filters in and out and look at the effects.
Which negative was this?
This is the 290.
290, yeah. Can we do a positive?
Sure. Let's do this, the 330p. So this will be very, very different.
Let's go to the 230.
Let's do 330 first, and then we'll back off.
Okay. Because I think it'd be interesting to...
Things are in motion. I don't want to get in the way.
Which one did you want? 230. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a couple of votes for the 230. So that's what we're going to next. Wow. And then once again, that was really interesting when you went through focus. Do that again, because it's almost like the center kind of lifts off. It's really interesting. Yeah, concave or convex effect. Yes, absolutely.
Can we also step down one stop in this one? then...
That's interesting too. That's nice. I mean, at a 2.8, that holds up really nicely.
And then can we also see clean from this one? Like no filter and then same lens?
And then maybe the 230.
Yeah.
So sorry.
No. We can do clean, and then we'll go back to the 230.
As a baseline.
We'll cleanse our visual palette.
Yeah. It's like, let's smell some coffee for a second.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is the native look of a signature lens. So it rolls in and out of focus really, really, really smoothly. And we've got the nice cat's eye at the edges. So. Okay, and now let's go to the 230p and take a look at that. That was really interesting when the lens came off, too. That was interesting, too. Okay, no talking unless you're talking into a mic.
We were just saying that it's striking.
It's striking. That was really interesting going in the background there on the edges.
Yep, you're getting a great example of what the filters do to those out of focus elements.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see what happens at different distances and different lenses. Because the 75 is really looking, I mean, we're looking kind of through the center.
Yeah. I mean, and this to me is very flattering on the face. I mean.
Yeah, I think also when we are not looking about highlights in the bokeh, but just the autofocus. I mean, with this, it's just popping up, like the face is just popping out from the background.
Well, that's something that I've noticed also is that, for example, the tighter his face is, the less of a strong. It feels like the strongest filters are a little more subtle on a close-up, and that's what I feel like I'm seeing here.
I think we saw that in our test.
We did.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. We're going to close with one more film, but thank you to Jeff Berlin, Lorenzo Scudiero, Shores Mosman, and Manu Anand. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to our guests, and thank you very much for hanging in with us. I hope this was really educational. If you have any questions, please just, you can email lenses@arri.com and we'll answer your questions as best we can. And we're going to close out with one final piece that was shot as an impressionist film. And this was shot in Spain by DP Pablo Raso. Thank you very much.